Hey, what's up everybody, Jukem here, welcome back to another Pokken video. This time, we're gonna make a tier list. But this tier list isn't just any other tier list. Like last time where we did an 8Y anti-air tier list, today we're doing a counter-attack tier list. So if you kept up with the channel, you've probably realized it's like the 4th time I'm making a video specifically talking about counterattacks, and for that, I completely understand that I'm insane for it. But I promise this is probably the last time. Though it's pretty interesting topics all around. To go into the specifics, this video is going to be mostly going on about the counter attacks themselves, so the attack part, how fast they are, all those types of details, but also how good each character is when they do a counterattack dash cancel, or I'll be saying CADC throughout the video. If your dashes suck, then it means bad, but otherwise, it's mainly about the attack and what reward you can get off it, and if it's even worth it. But the dashes definitely do matter a lot for a lot of characters. This list will also be ordered within the tiers. Now, first off, we're gonna go with the E tier. These are counterattacks that you mainly don't want to use at all. Really, they're pretty bad. All around, you might be better off with better options, whether it's command counters for some characters, or just suck it up if you don't have any other counter moves that aren't your main counterattack. So first off, for E tier, we have Mr. Blaziken right now. So Blaziken, there are no redeeming qualities to this counterattack. It is a high that doesn't hit high, so you can duck it, but you can also jump it pretty well, which is something you don't usually see for high counterattacks as easily, or at least the ones that don't lack range. This one's just short range, but also doesn't hit high at all to make up for the fact that it is short range and a high. It doesn't even combo unless there's a wall, and even then the reward isn't much. You only get a knockdown, and I'm fairly certain that's only when it's fully charged, not even on a crit, which would have been decently nice, but they really went out of their way to make this counterattack pretty bad. I can't really think of any reason to do it, but the dashes, Blaziken dashes are fine. His backdash, which a lot of characters will typically do if they realize their opponent isn't going to fall for the counterattack and they're going to either time an attack. So they want to time a move to beat out the counterattack, but the character who's countering wants to dash away. Blaziken's backdash does have a bit weirdness to it. It's a good backdash. He goes far away, but his legs are out because he does a stupid cartwheel. So his legs may get caught by a move, but otherwise it's fine. His forward dash is also fine, I guess, but it doesn't make up for the fact that everything else about it is pretty terrible, which is why I'm putting at the very bottom of the list. And every other character from here on out has at least some redeeming quality to their counterattack. Why did Blaziken have to get the short end of the stick for this? My mans can use fire and kick-based attacks, and they made it a palm thrust that has bad range and stuff. Unbelievable. Next up, we have Chandelure. Shashaha. Chandelure is a weird case because ghost dashes are very good. Everything else about the counterattack though is pretty bad. It does a lot of damage, which is really cool, so I guess I see what they were going for. It's pretty short range, hits all around her, which is decent, but the damage does not make up for the fact that it's, I think, the slowest counterattack in the game. The dashes help a bit, but then you also have to consider the fact that Chandelure has 3 different types of reversals without this. She has Smog, which is the counter reversal. Very good, considering it gets a defense down and pushes them to basically full screen where she wants you to be. The counterattack for this one doesn't even launch. It just spins them in place and doesn't push them very far at all. But then there's also Overheat, which does 1,000,000 damage at the cost of getting debuffs on you. That said, the damage is very much worth it because it also shifts, so you're pushing your opponent full screen once again. And then there's Minimize, which is full-blown immunity to everything that isn't a grab, even burst attacks. So you can do any sort of punish you want, including into Overheat, if you want to time it manually for certain attacks. So there's a ton of variety for Chandelure, and basically no reason to use counterattack. It's mainly going to be used to just absorb a quick attack and then probably dash away. Other than that, it's pretty terrible just from how slow it is. If it was faster or had more range, it could be useful, but at least it's not Blaziken's. Next up in E tier, we do have Darkrai. Darkrai is a similar case to Chandelure, I'll just get out of the way, where he has a command counter, Nasty Plot, which is much better than just using raw counterattack. So when it comes to that, you decide, oh yeah, do I want to do a thing that will just briefly get me synergy and then dash away, or do I want a thing that puts pressure on the opponent for even hitting my Nasty Plot? Even if it's from far away, because he gets to set up a clone too if he gets it off. Now what makes the counterattack bad itself is the fact that it's pretty slow, it's pretty not very strong. You do get a combo off of it. You gotta consider how Darkrai works as well. He's never going to want to use this in field phase unless he is in burst mode, because he wants to get the Dark Voids. And when you use counterattack, you're going to shift without getting Dark Void up, so it just seems worthless in field phase unless you're in burst, because you get Dark Void no matter what type of phase shift you get. Other than that, it's I think it read a special mid on the thing, which I did not know. I knew you can anti-air it, but I didn't know the counterattack itself was a special mid, so it has the properties of both mid highs and mid lows, so you could also jump it pretty easily. I think that's how that works. So you can either anti-air it or jump it. And while Darkrai does go pretty far, so if you were to have your opponent jump over you directly and cross you up, you might be able to get away and be safe, but otherwise it's not that good. It's kind of underwhelming, but at least it functions a tiny bit, but also it doesn't really function that well. It's a very weird counterattack. It's one of the ones I'm less experienced with, even though I fight Shadowcat a lot. It's mostly just because he never uses it. He does Nasty Fall all the time, and when you are outclassed so much, you gotta think of, why would I use this inferior move over this one that will get me a clone? Will get me, I think it gives him one of his stocks for Dark Pulse. I guess all I can say is just very underwhelming, and it's very low for a good reason on this list. Charizard. Now, in my initial draft of this list, I did have this like in C tier. The main reason for this is because I play Sceptile, and I, for one, like to jump a lot to fight off counterattacks. Now that I've had a few people like look at this for me, I realized, oh shoot, no, wait, that's bad. It's a very bad counterattack. It's very slow, it's very strong, it goes pretty high up, super high up, which is the good thing about it. So that's why I have it higher than most other characters. His dashes aren't very good. I forgot to mention it for Darkrai too. His dashes aren't good unless he's in BDR, but even then you still want to use Nasty Plot. Anyway, back to Charizard. So Charizard's dashes aren't the fastest. I guess it's fine or whatever you want to retreat, but it's still a very slow counterattack, one of the slowest in the game, and you'll easily be able to get beat out, or worse, you just run away from it because the range is also not that good horizontally. Otherwise, I would say of these counterattacks down here, it's still reliable for if your opponent actually hits you. For the other ones, they might be awkward or slow, so I could totally see this actually being more worthwhile to using and something Charizard might want to actually do sometimes, as opposed to just hitting Fire Punch. Fire Punch is also punishable on block, so there's at least some reason to use either move as opposed to Chandelure or Darkrai's options. If it wasn't so slow, it would be fine, or if it at least had bigger range, it would be fine. But Charizard is all about having a bunch of range, so I guess this is how they balanced it out. Now, next up, we have, where is he? Krogunk, this little monster. Now, I was going to put him in E tier. I think I'll put him in D tier, which is basically a tier where your counterattack is much better than all of these, but at the same time, it's still a bit lackluster. Now, the reason I almost put him in E tier is because his counterattack is just very inconsistent for combos. We haven't really talked about combos yet, and that's mostly because all the bottom tiers except for Darkrai can't combo off of their counterattack unless there's a wall or some weird situation. Krogunk, he's able to combo off his counterattack at any time, except for the fact that it's weirdly character specific, and you gotta memorize a lot. And Krogunk combos are just very hard altogether, and it's not really much reward if I remember. I might be wrong about that. You do get a lot of pushback from it, if I recall, because he got swim loops. But how you get those swim loops, or even if you can get swim loops, is very character dependent and kind of sucks. It's so weird that Blastoise, you can do 5Y, but it won't combo into 5YY, for reference. That's how weird this is. But other characters, they won't even get hit by the first 5Y. Krogunk's been a weird character all around, but his counterattack, kind of one of the parts where maybe I think, is this character finished? He's all about RNG, so I guess they didn't really care too much about making the counterattack function so well. Usually you would just do, I think it's 6x? I think his little belly flop thing where he bounces back. That's what you usually would use as like a combo finisher, which isn't very much damage. His range is pretty good, and also apparently it's a mid-high, so you can also anti-air it. Wow, he totally needed that to balance him out. Crazy how game design works. Krogunk does have some other options for counterattack or reversal type moves, and those are Foul Play, which is a command counter, which is very weird. It's a very cool move, but not as reliable as some other command counters. He does also have Poison Jab, which is punishable on block, and it's also very random. It's one of his RNG moves where he'll either buff the opponent once or twice, or debuff the opponent once or twice. And the damage is even random too. It either heals or does damage, or no damage at all too. So it's all over the place, so not the most reliable of other stuff. So you do have reason to use his counterattack at the very least. He can get a reliable combo, reliable in quotations, despite it being a mid-high, it's still pressure on the opponent's block and makes them scared. It's not like a high where someone can just like duck it. They have to specifically anti-air it, and it could catch a jump from time to time. Those are really the only positives I have to say about it, because it's still very, very weird, and why I almost put it in E tier. At the very least, it is more functional than the entire rest of his character. Next up, we have another weird counterattack. Notice how all the weird ones are like lower. This one is going to be Gengar. Gengar has very, very good reward off of this. He gets a very strong combo, only on counter hit, not even when fully charged, only on counter hit, which is what makes it super weird, where he could go into curse and does like 1,000,000 damage, and it doesn't even phase shift. He can set up like shadow balls right after while doing 1,000,000 damage to the opponent. The problems to it, he does have ghost dashes. Ghost dashes are typically slow, which is another fault with Chandeler's, but his are extremely slow. Chandeler's is a bit faster, but ghost dashes are still good. You know, that's the trade-off for having a ghost dash, so it's whatever, you know? He can absorb and phase through the opponent's attacks and try to punish them in unique ways that other characters might not be able to. Problem is, the range is basically non-existent. Probably the worst range of any counterattack in this game. It looks like it hits high, it doesn't actually hit high. It's a mid-low, even though it looks like it hits higher than it actually does. And the horizontal range is also basically non-existent. If you do happen to hit in the air with it, which is probably almost never, you do get an air combo at the very least, so that's nice. I was talking with my friends about this, and Mutator said this attack is basically like an anti-counterattack. Like, everything that would make a good counterattack is like flip-flopped, or what would be some downsides to a counterattack. So its range is non-existent. Its reward is really good. It has basically no recovery, which is insane. You can't really whiff punish it unless you were to attack right away when he's about to attack. He just defends himself right away. But otherwise, the height property being a mid-low and the range is what makes it really lacking. If you do get that hit, it's really, really strong. So you get a bunch of reward, you get a bunch of synergy, which Gengar loves to get. It's still good. I would say it's better than Kurogung's because the reward is so much better, but Kurogung's does have better range than it. So this is what the order I'm going with for these two. And for people who are wondering, oh, what about Mega Gengar? Because Mega Gengar is different than regular Gengar for his counterattack. I'm not going to put him on the tier list, but I guess if you want my quick summarization, it's very, very good. Very big range. You have faster ghost dashes, and I would probably put it in A tier. Otherwise, D tier. Not very scary until it is. And now we have Gardevoir. Possibly the character who gets the most reward off of their counterattack in the game. Gardevoir's counterattack does amazing damage while also having a ton of stage positioning opportunities, because she could either just reset them and teleport to cross them up if she really wants to, or just phase shift them from 1,000,000 miles away because she has stored power, she has 8Y for long range PSP using moves. She has so much, but the problem is, while she can move left and right during it, she has a range issue, and that's what really kills it. It's also a mid-low despite it looking like it hits higher, which is really sad. I don't know why they keep doing that. But that's supposed to be the problem with her, is that she doesn't like being up close with the opponent. It's a get off me tool that's sort of a last resort, and if you get it off, you get a lot of reward. It's also, I think, tied with the fastest in the game for a counterattack, so that's also really good. That's why I put it at the very top of D tier, but every other counterattack is more reliable because at the very least it has good range or it's fast. This one has not good range, but it is pretty fast. As for her dashes, if I recall, they're decent. I don't remember them exactly. I don't think they're like super good, but they're like average. But for a character like her who's a zoner, she wants them to be above average. Like Chandeler's is slow for a backdash, but she goes pretty far. I think Gardevoir just has a distance issue is what it is. I think her forward dash is pretty quick. It's still the top of D tier and still better than 7 other characters in this game, which is actually around her placement on most tier lists if I recall, so that's fitting, I guess. Based on how good your counterattack is where you are on the tier list. Smile. I'm totally not going to regret this when I get to the higher tiers. So now we have C tier. This is your basically super average counterattack. It's very reliable. You'll see characters use this all the time because that's what counterattacks are used. It's part of the attack triangle. First off, we have is Aegislash. It's a mid-high, but I've definitely seen people get hit by this, even when they anti-air. I think it's just one of those awkward moves where it's just lingering so long that it hits the opponent when they're anti-air frames are gone, which is pretty cool as like a unique thing for it, but I haven't been seeing that lately, so maybe players are just bad. Smile. Aegislash is a very strong one. He gets a lot of reward off of it, especially if it's an air hit. If it's hits in the air, because how it stuns them, they drop to the ground, and it means they're stunned a bit longer, so he has time to go out of his shield and get a 6xx starter combo, which will do a lot of damage. Otherwise, they like a lot of the time to just go into Sacred Sword, which is still a lot of damage considering you got to realize that right after he gets an attack buff and then goes into 2x into Iron Head Oki, which is a million chip damage, by the way. He gets advantage from it a lot. But the problem is that it's super slow. It does have a weird thing with it where I think it has like a lot of counter armor for some reason when he's about to release the attack. Usually it's very consistent with when there's a window to attack the opponent. So Aegislash is a bit weird, but it's to his benefit. But because of how slow it is, while it does hit mid-high, so it will catch certain jumps, a lot of times if your opponent's going to jump, they're typically going to, at least for me, jump behind you. So you don't have to worry too much about the counter armor thing I just mentioned earlier. Mostly just worry about it when it comes to if you want to manually beat out the counterattack with a move. A unique thing, if that couldn't convince you that he is still C tier, not D tier, like I've been giving a lot of slow or janky counterattacks, is that he does have a forward dash that makes him counter through projectiles. What he can do is he can start countering with his counterattack and then do a CADC to dash forward and go through other projectiles even longer. It's very good for him to approach with, but his backdash is also a bit lackluster. He's so happy, he's like, ah, or whatever, but the backdash isn't the best. It's okay, but his forward dash really makes his CADC really cool in those neutral situations if you're super far away and trying to approach. Otherwise, I think all the characters in C tier are better than this counterattack, but it's still a really good counterattack. I'm going to be more positive now. This is C tier. We're much better than D and E tier. So now we have, where's the little gremlin? You can tell I don't like him because he's on the bottom here. So Weavile. It's okay. It's a good counterattack. It's very slow, but it's like they learned. It's definitely like they learned because his counterattack, while slow, it hits pretty high. It hits higher than Aegislash's, but it's similar to Aegislash's to where, because of how slow it is, if you jump forward, you can typically just avoid the high hitbox. It's more consistent than Aegislash's though when it comes to hitting opponents who are jumping backwards and they're in the middle of it and they just get caught. Speaking of which, the only way you can combo off this move is if you get an air hit, which is pretty unique. If you hit it on the ground, it's going to be a air tech situation, but if you hit in the air, I think it's a knockdown, or at least it's long enough to where you could use knockoff, which is really, really good considering that removes meter. So very +1 to Weavile, I guess, but I hate the whole remove meter mechanic with him. So screw this gremlin. Weavile's forward dash is insane too, so you can totally use this for fake outs, which I haven't really brought up because a lot of them are super slow, but a lot of times CADCs on Oki are used for faking the opponent out into blocking, and then you just dash forward and then grab them. Weavile is one of the characters who does that the best. Yeah, I can't really think of any other character who would use that too much. That doesn't also have a super downside to it. Like Blaziken, you would just do a low anyway to beat out the counterattack, so you're just ready for it. I think the 3 so far would be probably just Aegislash, Gardevoir, and Krogunk. The others are just too slow for that to really work very well. For Weavile, it's insane. It's like one of the fastest in the game along with Sceptiles. And the damage is also really good, especially on crit. That does a lot of damage, which is the trade-off for it only comboing on air hit. But the fact that it still combos even with that is kind of insane into a thing that removes meter. I'm not going to get over that. And another unique thing that sets it off from other counterattacks is that it does a lot of shield damage as well. If you're running a support, which I'm not really going to bring up too much in this video, if you have like Yveltal or something that will leave them in blocks in for a bit, you will melt shields. You can get shield break so easily on characters who I think you actually just 2 fully charged counterattacks beat weak shields. At the very least, they're like 1 hit away from just being destroyed by any other attack that does a guard break. And if the opponent is too slow on trying to jump forward because they're scared of them, then they'll just get hit by the attack. They have to jump forward to avoid it or hit Weavile out. Which, you know, it's possible. It's a very slow counterattack. But otherwise, it's C tier material. It's very good. It just has those downsides of being super slow, but the range makes up for it a bit. And now we have Mewtwo, who has some of the best dashes in the game. His backdash is ridiculous. Mewtwo can totally use this to just absorb projectile, run away, and then fire off a Psycho Cut and do some positioning. Mewtwo is a very cool character when it comes to positioning and like meter management and stuff. So being able to absorb attacks to gain some meter, if you really are going for meter, and then shooting off a Psycho Cut, whatever you want, because that removes meter, it helps balance it out a tiny bit. Now for the attack itself. It is an attack that is super strong. It gets a pretty good combo, gets a full damaging combo at the wall. It's his main tool for field phase Oki when he does back wide, the fire spin, into fully charged counterattack, does a lot of shield damage, and he's plus, so he can just pressure you with whatever. He just kind of leaves you in an awkward position. The problem though, is that same attack is a low. It's very strong, and that's what makes up for it, but it's a low. That makes it super easily jumpable. For reference, you can jump against lows in this game on frame 1, so if you press it right when it comes out, you're still safe, as opposed to a mid-low, which you need 5 frames to jump. Doesn't sound like a big difference, but it really is. Sometimes people get caught by a mid-low. And another thing, a lot of moves have low invulnerability compared to how many have mid-low invulnerability. So many moves in this game just have low immunity, and it mostly comes from me because I play Empoleon, so Aqua Jet has low immunity. I'm just so used to hitting that counterattack and being like, oh, okay, then I'll just go into Surf, which also has low immunity, smile, and he just gets blown out of the water because he's not ready for it. Luckily, the dashes make up for it and the movement possibilities. If your opponent were to hit this counterattack, most of the time you are going to land it and you'll get a big reward, big damage. Doesn't even phase shift if you do the normal combo from mid-screen. Bit high risk, high reward. If it had slow movement and also very slow startup, I probably would put this in E tier. And then one small benefit to it too that I just remembered too is that it also hits behind him, so that's unique. Same for Charizard and Chandelure too, but you'll never see that for Chandelure. You'll never see that for Chandelure. And next up we have the boy, the Tortank, the boy who's blesses the rain downs in Africa, Blastoise. His dashes are incredibly slow, which holds us back a bit, but otherwise it does a lot of damage. It doesn't combo unless you get like a weird hit in the wall or weird spacing, but the damage is so good, and especially the range. And it's slightly faster than Weavile's. Doesn't do as much shield damage, but in my opinion, Blastoise needs a move like this. For other characters, you have other options too for counterattacks. I haven't really brought them up in this tier. Mewtwo has Fire Punch, which is probably his main reversal option as opposed to using a counterattack. Weavile has Taunt. It just lashes Parry, but Blastoise, Rapid Spin's pretty slow for his other counterattacks, so this is what makes this one a bit more reliable for it. It's just such a good move with not many faults. The only fault really is that it's just attached to Blastoise and his dashes are pretty bad. His backdash goes pretty far. It's really slow, but it goes pretty far, so it's good for that, but his forward dash is... God, his forward dash is terrible. Which I guess in comparison, Weavile has a good forward dash, but a pretty bad back dash if I recall. So that's kind of like, I don't know, I'm comparing characters and the trade-offs and stuff. I would say it's better than Mewtwo's though, at least in my head right now, because Mewtwo's is a low, and while he has all those other advantages, I think the reliability of having an attack that's just a giant back flip kick that can hit super high, I think it might even hit further than Weavile's. It's just nice. It's just nice to have. It's a good, reliable move. I think it's probably the average counterattack in this game, probably, despite it being very, very different than most counterattacks, so take that as you will. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. And then last for this tier, we have the other Mewtwo. Yes, two Mewtwo's between the Blastoise. That's cute. So Shadow Mewtwo. His counterattack hits very, very big. This is a character I almost put higher just because I have struggles with trying to jump over it with Sceptile. It can hit behind you if you decide to jump over him and you're already past him. That's how weird it is. He goes super far, so if you do somehow get over him without getting hit, you can't really punish him. You can't jump backwards and avoid it because you'll still get hit by the attack. It's very good. Problem is, it's a mid-high and doesn't really combo except for in burst mode. Or if there's a wall and you get a weird hit. Sort of like Blastoise, but it's more consistent than Blastoise's counterattack doing wall combos. It also helps Shadow Mewtwo that, fun fact, it's still Mewtwo. His dashes are still good. His backdash, dumb. His forward dash, also pretty good. So having those attached with a more reliable counterattack than most of them because it's pretty fast and it's just a good get off me tool. He does have stuff like teleport. That is another reversal option, but it's not as immediate as counterattack, so that's, you know, you have reason to use this counterattack a lot, actually. It's just that you can anti-air it because it's a mid-high, and that's the weird part. I think it's just neat. It's just neat. That's all I can really say. Another neat thing about it, too, real quick before we get on to the B tier, is that it also deletes projectiles when it's approaching. Not when he's charging, because, you know, he's going to be countering those, but when he's, like, running at you from mid-screen with a chargeable move, he can just delete all your projectiles. And some 8Ys are, funnily enough, projectiles, like Sceptiles or Gardevoir, so if they just do a quick one, it could get deleted and they might beat you out, but a lot of the time, he's gonna get hit anyway. So now we have B tier. B tier is above average for counterattacks. You get a good combo off of them usually. You can really see that. I just realized that basically half these characters don't actually get combos off of their counterattacks, so I feel privileged with my two characters. So first off, we have Pikachu, which I almost had in C tier. I don't know why, because I realized after explaining all that too, that wow, it's just kind of the above average type of counterattack in this game. I do think it's worse than all the other ones I'll be putting in based on what the range is or like the reward and stuff, but Pikachu's is pretty good. Pikachu's main downside is that his backdash is terrible. His forward dash is pretty good because it's quick, but dang, he does not go anywhere for his backdash, which makes it hard to just try to avoid stuff. Otherwise, the attack, good range. You get a combo off it on the ground, even from an uncharged crit. Not in the air, though, which is whatever. It's whatever. You'll be hitting most of these on the ground anyway. Mid-low, so jump. That's why I say for a lot of these. If this was a Sceptile, how easy can I jump over this? This would be an F tier. Just like half the cast would probably be. I don't really know what else to say, though. It's like, I said that for Blastoise like an average thing. It's like this for the B tier for Pikachu. It's just kind of like the bare basic, like you get a good combo with decent damage off of it. It's very quick. You get one good dash and one bad dash, which is probably the more important dash for counterattacks a lot of the time. I don't really know what else to say. I think that's just a fitting thing for Pikachu too. I'd never know what to say for this character. This character's kind of there. Well, before I have a crisis over what characters I remember in this game and not, let's go on to the next character, which is Machamp. It's a high, so you would expect, oh, just it's very easy, just like low stance, and that would be correct. But there's also so many other good properties to it. It's tied for like the fastest counterattack in the game, really quick for what it is. Somehow, it also hits really high. It's not like Blaziken's where it's a high and it doesn't hit high. No, this thing can also hit behind you like Shadow Mewtwo, so if you decide to jump and go behind him, he goes decently far, so the range is really good. And while he's not going to be aiming for at the wall, which is like the only way he'll get a super consistent full combo off of it, from mid-range, it's really good. If the opponent hits your counterattack, you're going to be launching them basically full screen towards the wall, and if you have cross chop ready, you can combo into, which is good damage. It doesn't shift, but it's a lot of damage, and Machamp doesn't really want you to shift when you're in dual phase either way, considering, you know, grappler. Submission and air grab do 0 PSB, but while doing good damage. It's very beneficial for Machamp to push you against the wall while doing little PSB as possible. And if I recall, his forward dash isn't the best. He goes pretty far for his back dash, though, which is pretty good. I'm not sure how fast it is. I should really look these up a lot of the time, but I'm just doing this tier list on a feel type of thing, you know? So his dashes aren't like garbage tier, but they're definitely not Mewtwo backdash tier or Weavile forward dash tier. If this were a mid or even a mid-low, which hits pretty high, I don't know why it would be a mid-low, but if this was a mid, this would be one of the best counterattacks in the game. Maybe even mid-high, it would be so much better, and it's just so lingering, and it's just so good. Like, I'm saying this for a B tier move. You can tell how counterattacks get in this game if I'm saying this already for a Machamp of all characters. It's really good. It's just the high thing is what really sets it back, and really sets it back. You can just low stance in neutral, and if you see the counterattack, just already be ready. So that's the major downside to it. But otherwise, it's very reliable. Reliable. Sometimes I don't know what I'm saying. I just say words. I just spout words. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Next up we have is Lucario. Lucario is, well, I guess this is a running joke now, probably the most average counterattack in the game. It's like, he's the Ryu character. You probably expect like a somewhat normal, just good counterattack. His is a mid-low, so you don't have to worry about the whole high situation, but it can be jumped, has good range. I think it's like somewhat slow, if I recall, at least for like the uncharged version, which is kind of weird. But otherwise, you get a very good combo. You push him so far back, you get a lot of meter, and Lucario really likes it. And his dashes are really good as well. For his other counterattacks, he has extreme speed, has DP, so his regular counterattack is a lot more safer when he wants to go for a somewhat reversal option. But at the same time, his DP is quicker. So that's sort of the relationship we're going on with this one. Same for Pikachu, and Machamp 4X and Scary Face are just a bit awkward sometimes to be practically used a lot of the time when wanting to go through counterattacks. Anyway, Lucario. Lucario, his combo route is pushing you super far with a combination of 2Xs and Bone Rushes. As I said, he gets a lot of meter, and after the shift, he can even use Force Palm to gain even more meter, because that's what Lucario is like using a lot of time to just gain meter. If you were watching a tournament and you see a Lucario player just doing that randomly and you don't know why, that's why. Look at the meter. The range is also just stupidly good. If this was pre-patch, I might have put this in C tier because the only combo he can get off of it in pre-patch of like Wii U was just Bone Rush. In DX, they made it so 2X launches and can be comboed without needing to be crit. So that's what the new route has been. But otherwise, it's just very good. I like it a lot. And now we have something that's a bit of a hot take. I will say that much. But this character, you know, it's my character. I know him best. Smile. The fully on counterattack. Think of it like this. I know his dashes are bad. Well, bad. He does have the whole immunity to low sting, which is very useful for trying to avoid grabs, especially with backdash, which I guess I'll just explain real quick before I go on to why people think this move is the best. All backdashes in this game have a few frames where they are immune to attacks, and Pokkén still has those frames. It's just that those frames line up perfectly for his low immune frames. He's considered airborne. So with that in mind, he's very easily able to avoid grabs if he gets lucky. A lot of times, some characters might do a backdash to avoid a grab or something, but then they just time it very badly, or the opponent times their grab super well, and the invincibility frames just barely don't cover it. And Pokkén doesn't have to worry about that. He could do counterattacks, bait the opponent into trying to grab him as a punish while he's charging up, and then just backdash away without having to worry about super timing it. I like these. They're very niche. But also, two other things real quick, because I'm going to fanboy about Empoleon right now. Forward dash, that'll activate Rotom because airborne and also block. Very cool thing. Don't use Rotom in the matchup unless you are ready for that. And then the other thing, which is actually very big, it can mess up your opponent's combo super badly. At the very least, Pokken has a 10% air scaling thing, so even if your opponent is ready, they'll either probably get a worse combo, minus certain exceptions, but the Empoleon really does like this most of the time because it's just less damage, and it can just ruin your opponent's combo. They might not be ready, or they'll be forced to go for a worse combo. It's just kind of nice, and it's those same situations where the opponent might want to try to attack Empoleon as opposed to grabbing Empoleon. So either way, he's winning a bit, and with his 630 HP, it's just really nice. Let's talk about the actual attack itself instead of me fanboying about the dashes and why they're underrated, and that's basically the reason why people say it's bad. There's a reason for those dashes to be slow. Otherwise, it's such a good counterattack. It hits super far, further than you think, and he can combo reliably off of it basically anywhere. He could just do 5Y into 2X, or he could just do 2X if they're outside of 5Y range. And the reward off of it is like the second highest in the game. Like you heard me say that for Gardevoir. Now imagine Empoleon. He gets to push you for free all the way across the screen. He can reset at any point for chip damage. He can knock you down at any point for chip damage. He's a lot of character unique combos, which unlike Krogunk are a lot easier to do and a lot easier to memorize because I think Krogunk is like absurd with it, if I remember. Sometimes he'll even be able to get a defense down on them. And defense down for him is super good because those usually involve resets and he'll just get a bunch of chip damage. And I think it's super underrated. And I know some people are probably gonna be like, wow, you're insane. You put this in the same tier as like Lucario, Machamp, and like the other future one that I have up front. I just think it's really good. I've used this to really good effect in tournaments. I'm a bit biased right now. I will say that. You could put this lower, and I would not blame you. But I've gone on enough about Empoleon. You get the gist of it. I've talked about basically everything. I went on too much about the dashes. So next up we have is Garchomp. Garchomp, it's a bit of a weird case, but in the good way, the really, really good way. Garchomp, so his counterattack itself is pretty good. You get good damage off of it. You get strong hit into knockdown, and Garchomp would love you being knocked down all the time, going from counterattacking to 6XX, and he just to go running at you. But what makes this really, really cool is that he can parry you a bit. He can cancel his forward dash into a running stance. Otherwise, his forward dash, I think by itself is, I guess, okay, but going into running stance and being able to attack right away is very, very strong when you counter through an attack. A lot of time you want to go for these as opposed to your normal just slashing attack that he has, because you'll get so much more damage based on the situation at hand. Like if you're at the wall, a lot of times they'll probably want to go for 6XX and go for those types of combos off of running stance. Actually, I just remember that 6YY, not 6XX. It's just a slight correction because I'm about to talk about an X move right now. His X, while he's running, is a giant overhead type of thing, which can catch jumps if they try to jump backwards. Not so much if they're going to jump forward, but it's also a very good damaging starter, which you'll do for the parry a lot of time when you're in mid-screen. Running stance in general, I could go on and on about, but those are the main two things I see with it, is just being able to approach after countering through a move, or the aforementioned parrying stuff. His backdash is also pretty good. It goes pretty far. And this is all for it just being a mid-low. It's just an average counterattack height, you know? It's not like it's a low. I think it used to be low in Wii U. I might be wrong about that. And its range is great, so it's really reliable. And as for his counter move, and I'm still bringing these up as like a comparison to like, oh, would you rather go for this counter or this counter? It's not a frame 1 counter for Stone Edge, so you definitely see this a lot more when it comes to actually wanting armor right away. So A tier, these are absurd counterattacks. And probably toxic ones at that. So first off we have is the only redeeming quality for this character is Suicune. So Suicune's counterattack, it's very unique. Something I noticed with a lot of Pokkén characters is that they have a very unique thing. Gardevoir has an air stay, which I didn't really consider too much, but didn't really change the placing at all. And Suicune's is one that it can change its counterattack depending on what buttons you press. So there's 3 variations. There's the regular one, which is just the headbutt, which is usually used on block if you realize your opponent is going to block it. There is the headbutt that comes after rushing forward, which is usually the combo ender. It doesn't really combo at all unless there's a wall, which you do get a good amount of damage at, I will say that. And then there is just the immediate headbutt after charging, which is insanely fast and used a lot of time to knock the opponent down and making sure they can't cancel into other stuff or get away, because in comparison, the regular counterattack is somewhat slow. To make up for it, Suicune's dashes aren't the best. The forward dash is I think it's like a Blastoise situation where Suicune's forward dash isn't the best. I think it's probably better than Blastoise's, but the back dash is really good at the very least. And it's just very reliable. It does have its faults with it being a mid-low, but if you're able to react on time, you can do your headbutt thing right away and react to the jump and attack them out of the air, because that's not a mid-low. If it was a mid-low, that'd be insanely off-putting. That's Suicune's counterattack, though. It's pretty simple, all things considered, despite how the mechanics of it work, like 3 different counterattacks basically coming all into one. And now we have the Fox Girl, who just has everything good in this game. Wow, they really wanted to make a top tier and have it be a furry at that. So Braixen. Braixen's is such good reward, such good range. It's a mid-low, despite it kind of not looking like it, but also at the same time, I've seen this thing hit people out of the air when they're about to land a lot of the time, and it's really, really stupid. So yeah, take that as you will. It's just good range for what a mid-low is. Being able to combo into 8x off it is just beautiful. It doesn't combo on air hits, but doesn't really need to. The combos just push the opponent back so far while also giving her so much support gauge. And, you know, if you phase shift, then that's even more chance for you to charge up your support gauge even more. You can also do stuff like canceling into your supports like Emolga, gaining support meter right after using Emolga while also applying the speed down. Braixen just has a lot of uses and a lot of variety because of her supports, while also just having it super big for some reason. As for her dashes, they're pretty good. I think her back dash is like kind of slow, but her forward dash is decently fast for what it is. And as for her other counterattacks, it's mainly just light screen, and that's only really good against projectiles. So it's basically the best of both worlds for being up close and far away for this character. Why did they make light screen frame 1? Why does she need it? To prevent an existential crisis on Braixen, I bring up an existential crisis on Pikachu Libre. Pikachu Libre, slightly better in my opinion, and that's mostly because Pikachu Libre, the way her counterattack is used is just her neutral. Her dashes are better so she can spam it over and over again, and you'll probably be hearing that a lot more throughout this video now. Oh my gosh, these counterattacks are insane. I neglected to say this for Braixen because I really just want to bring up that counterattacks that go into full combos not fully charged just based on a crit are kind of dumb. Braixen gets it, and especially when Pikachu Libre gets it. She goes so far with her freaking shoulder tackle, and if you press the button at any time, while it's also a super fast counterattack, by the way, so if you try to beat it out, have fun. She'll just, I'm having flashbacks. She'll just get a full combo on you, can even get a speed down on you because Electro Web is the funny button, smile. She could actually just forward dash CA to C over and over again with her counter, and it's optimal. That's how Libres play neutral a lot of the time, and if you see it in tournament, you know how good this counterattack is. It just hits so far, does decent damage while also, you know, the speed debuff is just really nice. Speed debuff of the normal debuffs in this game of like attack, defense, and speed is like the best one. It just limits your opponent's movement so often, and this goes to a certain extent for Emolga too when it comes to Braixen. But Pikachu Libre doesn't need Emolga. She can use a different support if she wants, like Mimikyu. She could reset you at any point during the combo, use Mimikyu. Now the main drawback to this is not really much. It's a mid-low. It's just, that's pretty much it. It's just a mid-low. The other counterattacks I have don't really care too much about opponents jumping them as often, but because it's a mid-low, you could jump in, you can punish Pikachu Libre. Libre's recovery from it is decently fast, so if you do a slow like aerial attack to try to punish her, she's most likely just going to counter again, and you're going to just die. But beyond that, very, very good. Very, very good. Very good. I want this character out of this game. Please get her out of this game. Man, it should have been Hawlucha. Next up, though, we do have is the Owl, the Decidueye, which is funny because this is another character who's like top 3 in the game. Wow, how insane that works. Unless you're Suicune, in which case you're still like bottom 6 or something. So Decidueye. Decidueye's is, this was pre-patch, I probably would have made it the top of A tier. And that's mainly because, fun fact, pre-patch he had more counter frames, like when he's about to release it. It was a situation I mentioned before with Aegislash, and I forgot to mention it, but Napoleon also has that going on, and they nerfed it, thank goodness, because the reward you get for Decidueye is fantastic. Stage positioning, you can drag them so far, and it does decent damage off too. And while it's a mid-low like Libre's, I think, honestly, you could probably swap Libre and Decidueye depending on how you feel and what you're looking for in like a counterattack. Decidueye, I think has the qualities that I like personally more, and what makes me want to put him higher than her. Decidueye has more active frames and more multi-hit attacks compared to Libre's, who is just one hit, and she's charging forward. So if someone jumps straight up and tries to punish with a quick dive kick or just decides to land, they could possibly, if it's mistimed, just get hit by the counterattack anyway. This isn't uncommon. I've seen it happen a few times. and you know, that full combo I mentioned before is super good. That said though, it also feels like it's the most generic and not much to talk about compared to all the counterattacks I've explained. And that's mainly because it's just the same qualities as a lot of other counterattacks, just improved. It's pretty basic. It's just stage positioning that you get to push them forward, decent damage, and the range is decent too. And as for his dashes are pretty good. His backdash goes decently far. I think it's somewhat slow. I'm probably wrong about a lot of these when I keep saying it. I just be like, oh, it's slow for counterattack. Nah, I think it's decently fast actually. For his forward dash though, which is the main thing I wanted to get on about, is that it's a ghost dash. You know what's better though? A quick ghost dash. It doesn't mean you have as many active frames, but it's still a forward dash where he has invincibility frames on it. He gets to approach you while also phasing through your attack. And a lot of the time, people beat out counterattacks, if not by jumping, they do it by trying to do an attack. Maybe not a grab he can phase through, but definitely an attack. He can dodge it and then whiff punish you with like a grab. And this forward dash being super quick is also useful for those same situations where people would want to jump, because he can jump over them, cross them up, and then they'll either whiff their attack, or the Decidueye is quick enough to be able to just anti-air them right afterwards. So very fantastic case all around for the Decidueye being one of the best counterattacks in this game. Libre can't really do that as well, considering if she whiffs, she goes far away, so she can't like hit the opponent out of the air as often, or she has very stubby normals. She can't really do what Decidueye does for like trying to anti-air the opponent, though her 8Y is also really good. But otherwise, depending on what you're looking for in a character, you could probably swap these two. They're just really good. I just see Decidueye as better in my opinion. For their counterattacks, because I forgot to bring that up for Libre, and I do that a lot, which is why I backtrack a lot, is both of them are DPs. So it's punishable on block. It's mainly for specific situations. You'd want to use these counterattacks all the time, and that's what Libre's neutrals are. Decidueye's neutrals, I don't think are like that all the time. They use it a little more, not sparingly, but definitely not as often as Libre, because that's Libre's entire character, because she has stubby normals. And for the end of A tier, we got my boy. We got the boy. This is, wait, let me get this because it's stupid. Haha, wait, I just realized I have a green screen. I don't know how this is gonna look in the footage. Oh no. But anyway, Subtile has, oh my gosh. So, you know all those things I said about every other character in this game? So imagine all that, but it's also a mid and not a mid-low. You can't jump it very well. I'll just say that, you can't jump it very well. It's not like other characters where attack's behind him, but you can't jump back. You can't like do a late jump. He gets a full combo on air hits, which, absurd, by the way. Why does he have no weakness with this counterattack? It's pretty quick. He can go into combos that apply defense debuffs, so like any combos that like give debuffs are just very good. His dashes are also insanely fast. Like his forward dash is Weavile tier fast. He will mix you if you are trying to block a counterattack and he decides to go for a grab instead. You could try to beat it out, you know, just like any other counterattack, but he could always early release, and when he does an early release and gets tricks on you, it's not a full combo. Don't worry, it's not a full combo. They're not that absurd. That'd be stupid. They did buff it though, so it always knocks them down so you can set up traps. It used to not do that. They thought that was a good idea, and I agree with them. So I'm very biased for my character. It's just absurd. The range, the decent damage. It's one of the best counterattacks in the game with one of the best rewards in the games. And a thing I always like to pay attention to is positioning. You've probably seen that throughout this entire video. Fun thing about this move, Subtile has moves where he can swap sides, so he can choose if you want to go forward or backward. And because of that, both combos also let you do defense debuff stuff. He can decide the stage positioning if you just get hit by this, and it's insanely easy to get hit by this. And if you're blocking and you're just too scared, you'll get grabbed. It's not okay. I've seen a lot of people say it's toxic. I will agree with them. It's pretty toxic. He does not need it, but he does need it in my heart because I like winning tournaments with this move only. I could actually do a whole video on Subtile without doing the control stick and probably just use Bullet Seed and counterattack and win, honestly. And JX, those moves are all so dumb. It really just tells you from the Subtile connoisseur himself that it's not just bias, it's just factually like that absurd. Subtiles is just like probably honestly factually the best counterattack in this game. It's just insane how strong it is in every conceivable way. Can't jump it well. I could reiterate everything, but I probably shouldn't at this point. So but that's the video. That's every counterattack in this game tiered. It's very absurd how some of the lower ones are actually kind of like doo-doo garbage, and then these ones are just super strong, already attached to already strong characters, unless you're Suicune. If you guys want to see more Pokken content, please, you know, do the whole like, comment, subscribe thing. Appreciate it a lot, y'all. I'll see you guys for more Pokken content, and probably for more Pokken tier lists. These are actually pretty fun to talk about. See you guys next time, and have a good one. I refuse to elaborate.